that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 353rd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the astonishing Tom Fennell. In the flesh.
In the flesh.
We're recording this on the 9th of January, and that being the case, this is news from the 2nd through the 8th. And I will make an appeal for funding. We still need a few dollars to pay our dues for this year. If you'd like to, you could go to BrattleBoroTV.org and donate. The best way to do it is either by PayPal or by credit card. And when you do, when you fill in the amount, go down a little bit on the screen and you'll see a thing that says that it looks for comments, and just say it's for Energy Week. And that way it'll get credited to our show. Also, I should explain that this show is based on my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com.
The best of the blog.
It's the best of the blog, which is not the best blog, but anyway, I go online every day and get the news that I find on energy and climate change, and I put 10 to 15 articles, synopsis for each, and the links to the original article online, and those go up on my blog, geoharvey.com, and you can click on the calendar to go to the date that the item that we read is. We will start on the 2nd of January, and about every third item will go forward a day.
Well, some of these are worth looking at.
Yeah,
Matter
some
of
of
fact,
them
this week, a particularly large number of them
Yeah.
are. And you wouldn't be disappointed if you looked them all up. Some of them are really in-depth. They very informative.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, should we start?
Yeah, might as well.
We
start
have
with
an
the first
item
one
from
here. We got a picture coming up.
KSHB.
We got a picture.
We have a
and I'm
picture
gonna try to
of
get the
Smoky
picture.
Hills Wind Farm.
Is that Smoky Hills? There's no hills.
I know. No, what can I say?
Well, that's Kansas.
I knew a girl who came from southern New Jersey, and she told me that if I was in the town that she lived in and wanted to find where she lived, all I had to do was ask people where the hill was. And the hill was a rise in the road of about 6 feet.
Well, let's move along with this one. We're
Yeah.
in Kansas already.
We're in Kansas. There
And
we
it says
go.
that Kansas's embrace of wind energy helps it reduce CO2 emissions.
Kansas.
Duh.
Kansas has been able to reduce CO2 emissions for the 10th straight year.
Well, that's encouraging.
Isn't it? Largely due to the rapid adoption of wind energy and a slow move away from coal-powered electricity.
There's a lot of wind energy in Kansas.
There's a lot of wind in Kansas. I was born in Kansas. I was born, you know that farm in The Wizard of Oz?
Well, it's been a long time since I
Yeah,
saw
well,
Wizard of Oz.
The farm that was right across the street from
no
where I
kidding.
live. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
No, actually, that's a fib. The Kansas News Agency reports that about 36% of all electricity produced in Kansas is from wind. Actually, I was born in Atchison, which is the same town that Amelia Earhart came from.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Who'd have thought?
Well, this electricity produced in Kansas is the highest percentage of any U.S. state.
I wonder.
At least according to this article.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas might argue with them.
I wonder. Well, it's a high. It depends upon how you measure these things.
Yeah.
There's more wind energy coming from Texas, but it's more wind energy measured how? Measured in absolute terms? Yeah, Texas has more in absolute terms. Measured per capita? Probably Kansas.
And how about capacity?
That would be Texas.
That'd be Texas.
Yeah, that's what I mean by absolute terms.
Well, let's move along here.
Okie doke. We have an item from WION.
Sounds like a radio station.
It does. Actually, so does KSHB, but
Yeah,
here
it
we
does.
go.
Conservatives to form a coalition government with the Greens in Austria.
In Austria. Austria's conservatives, led by Sebastian Kurz, agreed to form an unprecedented coalition
It is unprecedented.
government with the Greens, capping almost 3 months of negotiations. It will mark the first time the Green Party has been in power. What in power means here is that they're actually part of
the government.
the government coalition.
Yep.
And they're not
So they got a good voice.
part of the opposition. They have a good voice. What they're doing is they're saying to the conservatives, and the Austrian conservatives are very conservative. At least that's my take on it.
The article was reading it that this really was I don't know how they ever worked it out together.
Well,
They
you
had a
see,
lot of
here's
arguments
the
about
thing.
it.
Conservatives, why would conservatives be against Greens? The Greens,
Politics.
they aren't from Africa or Turkey.
Yeah.
You know, they don't. When you get down to the list of things that conservatives want, they really
Greens
don't.
supply it, yeah.
You know, the Greens can sit
They're
there
for
and
the
say,
same
"We're
thing.
going to give some validity to this government." And
Yeah.
if the conservatives want to talk about nationalism or they want to talk about tax reduction, the
It's
Greens
not our business.
the Greens can say, "You want to reduce taxes?
Okay.
Fine. You know, increase the amount of green energy we've got, and you know, no tax on green energy. You're going to be paying very much lower utility bills. You know, it's
Well, from the article, it says the environment has replaced immigration as a top concern.
that's why I
in the
mentioned
country.
Africa and Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and yeah, okay. Should we move on?
Yeah, we got another.
We have
picture
an
coming
item
up.
here from Renews. We have a lot of stuff from Renews.
Well, let's take a quick look at that picture.
Yeah.
I would guess that that's solar.
You know, that looks a little bit like solar to me. I didn't get a really close look at it, but go ahead with the title.
German solar grows 30% in 2019.
That's impressive.
It is that.
The solar market grew by about 30% in 2019, with almost 4 gigawatts of new projects installed. That's 4 big things.
Well, every time you see gig, it means big.
Unless you're talking
Gigawatts.
about gigajoules.
Yeah, that's small.
Gigajoules are small. Initial analysis by the German Solar Industry Association, BSW, said. The association said falling PV prices with increased power prices, intensifying the climate debate, and growing electromobility. The electromobility means vehicles of all
Yeah, I was going
kinds,
to say cars. Yeah.
and are the main reasons for growth.
Well, from the article, you know, they're giving them a pat on the back, but they say more needs to be done.
More needs to
boost
be done.
solar expansion in Germany.
Yeah.
If the country is to meet its climate goals.
If it's going to meet its climate goals.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, even Germany's climate goals aren't enough to keep us out of trouble.
That's true too.
At least I say it's the fact. It's my opinion. Okay.
Let's move along here.
We are
Friday
up to
the 3rd.
Friday the 3rd, as you just said.
The
And we-
Trump administration plans 2020 approvals for major projects. So that's interesting.
This is from E&E News. That's E&E. The Trump administration is poised this year to do what congressional Democrats and other critics of the president's energy dominance campaign have been demanding for a long time: advance large-scale renewable energy projects on federal lands.
There's something fishy about that.
Well,
I don't
you know, Steve Hanley, who writes for Clean Technica,
Yeah.
the day after this,
Yeah.
or maybe it was the day after that, wrote an article in which he said, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?"
Good
And
question.
He said, "Okay, so they're allowing these big solar project to go in, but they're going to try to allow everything to go in under an all of the above strategy, which includes fracking and extracting nuclear energy and all kinds of things." So
This was a good article. It's in
Yeah,
depth. This is
absolutely.
a good article.
Absolutely. Yep.
Conservation groups and congressional Democrats have criticized Trump's focus on oil and gas drilling
Yep.
and mining on federal lands,
Yes.
which is still going
It's still
through
going
as far
forward,
as this
yeah.
is concerned. The Bureau of Land Management plans to approve 5 commercial-scale solar and wind projects as part of this.
Right.
Okay, as well as opening 20,000 acres in Southern California for geothermal.
Yes.
That's interesting.
It is.
That one is.
Very interesting. Okay, we have a picture coming up,
Yeah, we got
as
some
Tom
sheep
always
here, I
says.
think.
This is an article that I really enjoyed.
This is a neat little article.
It's a neat little article. It's from the BBC.
Belching in a good way. How livestock could learn from Orkney sheep.
Have you spent much time around cattle, Tom?
No. They belch a lot.
They not only do they belch a lot, but they have the most deep, resonant belch you could possibly imagine. It is a work of art by a cow. Okay, one of the Orkney Islands, which is called North Ronaldsay, is home to 50 people and 2,000 sheep. In the 19th century, the islanders built a stone wall to confine the sheep to the shoreline. They're only allowed to walk around on the shore.
On the beach, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at this, you can
There's
see...
a map, you can see that.
Oh, yeah. And they don't have much of this island available to them. But the flock is confined to the shoreline, and it survives on seaweed.
They have been eating seaweed for a long time.
That special diet could hold the key to more climate-friendly livestock farming.
This is a good article. Lots of pictures if you like
Lots
pictures.
of pictures. This is fun.
So
And it talks about, we've actually talked about the link between reduced methane development in the stomachs of ungulates, which means less methane being belched, and consumption of various kinds of seaweed. And
so they're not belching as much methane.
Yeah, they're not belching as much methane. And one of the things that I found interesting about this article is that they get a lot of seaweed washing up on the shore.
Like free.
And they just eat it.
Yeah.
And
well, the sheep have been living on the island for thousands of years. Okay?
Yeah.
This is not new. They're adapted to it. The 6-foot-high, 13-mile wall restricts them to only beachfront.
Yes.
Okay? The flock's diet has been restricted to seaweed foraged from the shore, which gives their meat a fuller, gamey flavor. A delicacy sought after by chefs.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a win-win situation.
It's a win-win situation for everybody except the sheep, who don't like being eaten.
Well, the cows graze in the interior. They have the grass. Okay,
Yeah.
The sheep get the seaweed.
Well, they don't want salty milk.
Yeah, that makes sense. Studies have shown that livestock that have some seaweed in their diets belch far less methane than animals fed on grass or general feed.
And you know, one of the things, and Tom and I talked about this before the show, sheep and so forth are not the only animals that eat seaweed. People do too.
Yeah.
You can buy seaweed down at the co-op.
Sure you can, yeah.
There's a Korean seaweed salad that you can get in the prepackaged deli section, and there is seaweed of various kinds in the wherever it is. They use seaweed is the green that's used to wrap sushi.
Of course, yeah.
So people
Well,
eat
there's a lot of
seaweed.
different kinds of seaweed, but
Dulse, you mentioned, and laver bread was something that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move along here.
Okay.
We're back to Australia, which is still very much in the news.
Australia is still very much in the.
The Navy rescues people from fire-hit Malakuta, and we've talked about this.
Oh,
already.
yes. The Navy, the Australian Navy has evacuated about 1,000 tourists and residents who were trapped in the fire-ravaged town of Malakuta on the Victoria coast. The evacuees will be taken to the western port, the Navy said, about 16 hours voyage down the coast. I was interested. We talked about this evacuation last week.
Yes, we did.
And we speculated about what kind of ship was used. And I said a destroyer wouldn't work.
No.
And, you know, I don't think it occurred to you, but it certainly didn't occur to me. The Navy has ships that are not combat ships.
Oh, sure.
And they
Supply
have
ships.
In this particular case, what they used was they were combat ships.
They got troop transports
but
too.
they were landing vessels of various kinds. They used landing craft to pick the people up from the beach, and then they transported them back to a landing ship.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people got onto the landing ship. It did not. The pictures that I saw did not look particularly crowded.
Well, this is an interesting article. There's some maps on it which are worth looking at.
Yes.
There's a 2.5-minute video which is also worth looking
Right.
at. It's kind of depressing because it's about the fire.
Yeah.
Well, some 4,000 residents and tourists fled to the beach when bushfires encircled the town.
Yep.
Wow, that must have been scary. Thousands of people are also fleeing parts of neighboring New South Wales, where a week-long state of emergency is in force.
Well, Tom, some of the stuff that has come out of this is absolutely astonishing. It's almost unimaginable. The government.
Well, one of the things is the Prime Minister took a vacation in
Yeah,
Hawaii.
I know, and he has been taking a lot of flack for that.
Well, he deserves it.
Yes, he tried. The Prime Minister of Australia, after taking a vacation in Hawaii during these fires, came back and hit a lot of criticism.
Yes.
And he went for the first time to a town that had been hit by the fires. And while he was there, he walked up to a young woman and he reached down and took her hand. She didn't offer it.
Okay.
And he put her hand into his to shake it. And she said, the only reason why I'm shaking your hand is because, and I didn't hear the rest of the words, but it was something like, we need help here. And he just dropped it and walked away.
No kidding.
And
Arrogant guy, huh?
well, I don't know if it's arrogance
Or stupid.
or embarrassment or what, but I find it really hard to believe that this guy is going to be reelected. That was an area where people supported him.
Yeah.
And the people there were uniformly heckling him, and they were saying things that were not very nice as they heckled. But other things that have happened, the Australian government and the governments of the states have told people, if you're not out of these towns, that where we're saying, these towns that are cut off,
Yeah.
don't try to leave. If the fires come, don't try to leave. Just find the best place you can to hide.
Neck deep in the sea.
Well, I mean, these people on the coast had an advantage.
Yeah.
But you can't go down into the cellar to escape a fire the way you can go down into the cellar to escape a tornado.
Well, that's true.
So, people are in trouble. And the other one that I heard, do you know Hillary down in the co-op?
No, I don't think I do.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with her yesterday, and she said that friends of hers from Australia visited, and they told her that the koalas are messing with people's minds.
No.
And this is
this happen?
really a sad story. The firefighters are starting to have psychological problems
Yeah.
because they go in to fight the fires and they're surrounded by screaming koalas.
Wow.
Now, koalas, I should say, are not gonna. They don't have to be burning to be screaming.
Okay.
They
scream naturally.
They scream naturally. Whenever they're upset, they scream. But their screams sound so much like a human scream. And these
Must be
firefighters
very unnerving.
unnerving. That's right. And so it's hard. Okay.
Well, we got a picture coming up.
We
again.
are up to Saturday, the 4th of November, and we have a picture of a downtown neighborhood. Okay.
This is kind of an irritating article.
Irritating. It's from
Oil and petrochemical companies want you to pay to protect them from climate change.
Right. Now you know why it's irritating, everybody. This is from Clean Technica. Not content with ruining the earth with billions of tons of CO2 and plastic waste, oil and petrochemical companies want the federal government to build enclaves to protect their refining facilities from rising sea levels and more powerful storms.
Well, the article begins, and I'll read from it.
Yeah.
Chutzpah is murdering your parents, then throwing yourself on the mercy of the court because you are an orphan.
Yeah.
Okay. Oil and petrochemical companies are guilty of chutzpah raised to the 10th power.
Yeah. Well.
They don't expect the government to protect private residences, just the industry infrastructure that makes their business possible.
And their refineries are, some of them are inland, but there's a huge number of them that are right on the
Right
coast.
off the shore.
Yeah.
They claim that protecting industry is a matter of national security. Can we have $12 billion, please?
Yes. Donald Trump told people, I think it was yesterday, that, which would be the 8th of January, that the United States doesn't need the Middle East oil, so we don't have to worry about a war.
Yeah, I heard him say that.
And I was sitting there thinking, he finally got something right. What we need to do is to get rid of all oil, not just Middle East oil.
You've got a good point. He doesn't. Well, we're back to Australia here.
Yeah, with an item from NBCnews.com.
Australia's fires could change the country forever.
Yeah, I guess they
I'm not
could.
sure could is the right word there. I think it will.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yeah. Natural rhythms of Australia's environment include wildfires, but scientists haven't seen anything like this before. At least 12 million acres of land have already been scorched, and more than 100 blazes are still active, and the fire season has yet to reach its peak.
Well, one of the problems with the animals is it's burning the area that the animals inhabit. They're running away. Then they're coming back, and there's no food for them.
Yeah, this is very hard.
The blazes threaten to reshape Australia's ecology, even in places where plants and animals have adapted to yearly fires.
Yeah.
Earlier than usual blazes could portend a worrisome trend that is echoed around the world.
I started looking into the record of Australian fires.
Yeah.
And of course, in the past, there have been more deaths. I'm going back to the 19th century.
Yeah.
And
So they've always had fires.
They've
but
always
not like
had
this.
fires. They have had a fire season. They have an
Every
official
year.
fire season that starts on the 1st of June and it ends on the 31st of May. So it's year-round. That's the official fire season.
Wow.
But when people talk about a fire season, they're talking about summer, which is our winter because they're
upside down.
They're upside down. It's amazing the way people learn to walk on their hands down there. Anyway,
They must get tired walking on their hands.
yeah, but they have a fire season every year, and I was looking at the record, and the record, had the number of acres burned or the number of square miles, whatever. And this season, when I looked, was not the worst.
It wasn't, huh?
It wasn't the worst. Not in every respect. It was the worst in some
pretty bad
respects.
one.
Pretty bad. But the thing is, the season was just starting.
Yeah,
That
that's true,
summer
too.
season was just starting, and it was almost the worst. It's going to go on. The really bad part of it is we're only about 2 weeks into a season that's.
So this is sort of like June to them.
Yeah, we're two weeks in. Or
We got
3
July and
weeks.
August coming up.
Exactly. There you go. Okay.
Well, you got another picture coming up.
We
here.
do indeed, and this is from Common Dreams,
It is that.
which is a
And
good
that
site,
is
I
a
think.
picture of Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria.
Yep.
And that does not look very pretty.
No, it doesn't.
Groundbreaking study finds fingerprints, which is in quotes, of human-caused climate change in global daily weather.
Now this is
This is kind of scary.
yeah. Scientists can now detect the, quote, fingerprint, end quote, of human-caused climate change in a global perspective of daily weather patterns, according to a groundbreaking analysis published in the journal Nature Climate Change. And what they're saying is that you can find evidence of human-caused climate change in the weather every day.
Every day. I'll read from the article.
Yeah.
On the basis of a single day of globally observed temperature and moisture, we can detect that fingerprint and conclude that the whole Earth is warming. Climate change is influencing the conditions that people and ecosystems are experiencing every day all around the world.
Yeah.
Okay, the study was in part motivated by Trump's tweets about how a cold day in one particular location disproves global warming. And he did say that.
Oh, he's done it so many
Several times.
And, Senator Inhofe did it when he took the
snowball,
into
yeah.
the Senate. It's really kind of, here we are in Vermont, okay? You were talking when you came in about how cold it was outside.
Yeah.
And what was the temperature? Do you know?
Well, it got up to 20, but it was about 5 last night.
It was about 5.
Yeah.
And what is the normal average low temperature for the winter around here?
Probably about 20.
It's about 20 below zero.
Average winter temperature?
The coldest.
Oh, the coldest winter. Yeah.
Coldest winter temperature. In the
And
past,
those are getting warmer.
we haven't had a temperature this winter in Brattleboro that has been below 5 degrees. Positive.
I don't
5.
think so. I don't think
And
we have.
we're halfway
Because
through.
I watched that to see if my car will start.
We are almost halfway through the heating season. If the rest of the heating season is like what we've already seen, we're not.
We're ahead of the game.
Oh, Yeah, ahead of the game in a sense, but in another sense, this is excellent weather if you happen to be a deer tick.
I somehow think I skipped that incarnation.
Okay.
This is an interesting article coming up. Sunday, January 5th. Lithium for Tesla battery uses less water than 11 avocados. And I'm going to explain that a little bit because that threw me.
Yeah, I
didn't understand
I
what
went
was
through
going
there,
on.
and boy, this is interesting. This is from Clean Technica, and one explanation that I should start out with is people look at the amount of water used to make lithium for a battery, and they say, "Look at how much water you're using. This is crazy." Okay, this is what the article says. Reportedly, 3,840 liters, which is 1,104 gallons of water, are
I'll stick with 1,100.
Huh?
I'll stick with 1,100.
1,100, yeah. Are evaporated for a 64 kilowatt hour battery, which is what you would find in a Tesla. Not the biggest battery in a Tesla, but that's what you can find.
That's an average battery for a Tesla.
According to the director of the Helmholtz Institute for Electrochemical Energy Storage, this is the amount of water used to produce 250 grams of beef, 10 avocados, or 30 cups of coffee.
Well, how much is 250 grams of beef? I should have looked that one up.
It's a little more than half a pound.
Half a pound, okay. Well, from the article, and I didn't know this myself, massive amounts of water are required to produce lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah.
I didn't look up why or how, because that's news to me.
They're evaporating it.
They're evaporating the water, yeah.
And where does that water go?
Well, it goes into the air. It goes into the air
and
as
after
steam.
that, it comes down as rain.
It's not lost water. It's just changed in its
Yeah.
substance.
So what we should do is evaporate that water in places where we
Where
want.
you need rain.
That's right. There you go. But go ahead. You've probably got more to say there.
Not much, because it baffled me, and I still don't understand why they need so much water to make the batteries, because it's not part of the battery.
The lithium is.
The lithium is, but not the water.
The lithium is being obtained
From water, isn't it?
as a solution, as part of a solution in water.
Well, this is interesting. I did find this out. I should have known it. Lithium is lighter than water.
Yes,
It will float.
that's right. And if you ever try floating it, you'll be in for a shock. Because the first thing that it does is it fizzes like an Alka-Seltzer tablet, and the second thing that it does is catch fire.
That's interesting. That's very.
Sodium does the same thing.
Let me intersperse here something that's kind of related. I used to work for a company that made electrical cable. I actually
Yes.
worked for several companies that made electrical cable.
Yeah.
And this one company came out with a new approach to electrical cable, which was sodium conductors.
Oh my gosh! Oh no!
Which they extruded.
Oh no!
No, and sodium
I
burned.
could just see the accidents that would happen with that.
Nothing was happening.
Really?
No, they had it all sealed up. They had a pretty good process,
Ah.
and they put in a trial down in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay, and they dug all the trenches, and they put the cables in, and then they went home for the evening, and it rained overnight.
Oh no!
And when they came back, all of the cables were floating.
Oh no!
They didn't burn or anything, because
Oh, my
they
gosh.
were all sealed. It was well thought out. Everything was sealed.
Yeah.
They couldn't expose the lithium
Yes.
to water, which would make it burn.
Yeah.
But the lithium cables were floating,
No, amazing.
which caused a lot of amusement, and of course they had to hold the cables down while they backfilled.
Okay.
Sometimes you know, everybody was talking about the specific gravity of the cables and the specific gravity of lithium. Nobody ever thought of that means it'll float.
Well, I remember as a kid looking at pictures of warships and hearing that their sides were a foot thick of steel and saying, how can that float? But
Yeah.
Okay, we've got an item here from the BBC with a very
This
interesting
is an
graphic.
interesting article. I got the picture up already.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, you had the old
I had the
picture
old
up,
picture.
and I put
You
this
changed
one
the
up.
picture.
Okay.
Well, this is an interesting article, and it's an interesting picture.
Yep.
And it says bushfires can create their own weather. And
Yep.
the article says how pyrocumulonimbus clouds develop, which is what you're looking at there
Yes.
in the picture.
Yes.
Okay, and
There are also
tell us how it goes.
pyronimbus clouds. Okay, record-breaking temperatures and months of severe drought have fueled a series of massive bushfires across Australia. Well, we knew that. The fires burning since September have intensified over the past week. High temperatures and strong winds are forecast for the weekend, creating further fire risk. But what we should do is look at this.
Let's look at that picture there, yeah.
In the lower left corner, you've got smoke plume rising.
The fire.
There's a fire there, and the hot air rises, so that just goes up fast. Well, people who know about fires know that when wood burns or anything else that's made of cellulose,
there's water in it.
There's water in it. It's water and carbon dioxide and obviously particulates. And they rise, but they are also, it's hot, but it's also full of water, which rises as steam. Now, the steam...
As they cool, it turns into clouds.
That's right. And the clouds happen to be full of particulates, which means that they're full of materials that which is smoke. They're full of materials that the steam can condense around. So
guess what happens? It rains like hell.
It rains. The cloud forms. That's item 3. Item 4 is a thunderstorm. Item 5, almost in the middle of the screen, a little to the left, is a downburst, and they have had real
strong downbursts,
big storms,
big thunderstorms. Yep.
Big thunderstorms with just what a friend of mine called torrential rain.
Torrential rain.
Torrential.
Yeah. And the last item there is the scariest.
Yeah, the lightning. So miles down, a new fire starts. Well, you can also get fires that are when you have a firestorm like this. The firestorm will have air in that number 1 area rising so fast that it creates a tornado, and the tornado will pick things up that are burning, and the embers.
Wow. That's not good.
Well, I've mentioned it before. The Peshtigo Fire, a hardware store that burned to the ground. The sign on the store was picked up by a fire tornado, and it went up so high that the embers on it went out, so it stopped burning, and then it fell back to the ground many miles away. And that was one of the indications that maybe that fire jumped the Green Bay, which at its narrowest point is about 10 miles across. So you could have, and they've even talked, there are people who say they think that the fires that happened in Michigan that same day might have been started by the fires in Wisconsin, and they would have jumped Lake Michigan.
That's exactly what happened, yeah. And I think that's what happened.
Well, it was the same day as the Chicago fire. And it was really dry. Really dry. Well, it was all part of the same drought. But anyway, there's the picture of how...
It's a good site.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pictures in it. There's a nice interactive map that you can play with.
Yes.
And we got a little takeaway here.
Okay.
Rain has brought some respite to the thousands of firefighters and volunteers tackling the blazes. But by the start of January, conditions were still dangerous and a state of emergency has come into force. Bushfires can drive thunderstorms, increase the risk of lightning strikes, and further fires, which can travel faster than most people can run. You don't think about that. You can't outrun these fires.
You cannot outrun them. That's right. And, you may be better off in the cases of some of them turning around and running through them the other way. I don't know.
You may, because it's already burned there.
Yeah, because they're not very broad when they're moving that fast. And I wouldn't want to give people advice to do that. But, in some cases, these things get really counterintuitive. Well, certainly, if I were wearing an asbestos suit, that might be what I was doing. Okay, we've got an item here from Where are we, Tom? Lewiston Sun Journal.
Avangrid, betting big on renewable energy. Now, we've talked about Avangrid before, so we'll mention it a second here.
Avangrid is pushing forward with multi-billion-dollar initiatives to create 2 wind farms off the coast of Nantucket, about 30 miles south of Cape Cod. Together, they would add more power to the New England grid than the company's controversial billion-dollar main transmission project, which, by the way, got some of the approvals that it needed from zoning and so forth.
It is very controversial.
Yes, that's right.
It's basically for bringing Canadian hydropower down to Boston.
Right.
And the people from Maine say, well, why go through unspoiled part of Maine to bring this power down?
The people who are giving zoning and so forth permissions in unincorporated areas
Yeah.
gave the permission yesterday.
Well,
So
we'll see what happens.
we will.
Well, Avangrid is a subsidiary of Iberdrola, a Spanish
Iberdrola.
firm.
That's right.
That's the largest wind energy investor in the world.
Yep.
So this Iberdrola knows what they're doing. They
know about wind power, and
all over Europe.
And these wind farms that they're talking about putting in south of Cape Cod are big.
They're going to be
They
big.
would provide. Well, this says twice as much power as a billion-dollar transmission project.
Well, from the article, offshore New England is among the best spots in the country to turn wind into electricity.
Right. Okay, we're up to Monday, January 6th, and we've got an item
Got a
from
picture
Clean
of a car
Technica
here.
and a picture of a Westport, Connecticut police car.
Yes.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Police Department adds a 2020 Tesla Model 3 and explains why.
Asked why he chose the Model 3, Police Chief Koskinas, which is probably pronounced wrong, but I'm sorry if it is, says he, quote, believes in being green, end quote. However, the car's unmatched performance for the money, its 5-star safety rating, and its top-of-the-industry collision avoidance technology, and its low lifetime cost were also factors.
Well, they're missing one of the biggest parts of it. Police cars spend most of their day idling.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is
and with
really
these cars,
bad.
they don't have to idle.
It's really bad for an engine.
Bad for everything.
Police cars are worn out after 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they've got 40,000 miles on them, and they're worn out.
Well, the engine has got a lot more than 40,000
Yes,
miles
that's
on it
right.
because it's just been idling.
Actually, I brought up with a town meeting, I think it was last town meeting, the idea that the police department should always look into electric vehicles.
Absolutely.
For exactly
that reason.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it says in the article. Consider the length of time in a day that police cars spend idling, as they need to keep the engine running to power the lights and keep online computers running properly without draining the battery. Well, in this particular case, they don't have to worry about that. They just shut it off.
Yeah.
And the battery is big enough that they can rely on it to work.
Well, they step in and they have it on. They put their foot on the accelerator and it takes
And
off.
they go. Yeah.
They don't have to worry about the engine being warm or whatever.
Well, basically, when the engine is off, it's off.
Yeah. But it's also ready to go.
Instantly.
Instantly. Okay.
Well, we're back to Australia here.
We are indeed. And this is an item from BBC.
It's about Australia fires. Rain brings relief, but huge blazes are expected ahead. No relief, guys.
Yeah,
No.
this is the rain that we described in
Yeah.
that previous thing. Sooty rain.
Sooty rain.
Fell on Australia's east coast from Sydney to Melbourne, where the torrential rain reported in some parts of New South Wales. But the officials warned that it would get hot again soon, and huge fires in Victoria and New South Wales could meet to create a larger mega blaze.
This one's from the BBC, and they usually do a pretty interesting job. So this is one you might want to look up.
Yeah.
There's 2 1-minute videos in it. Lots of pictures. I love the pictures in the articles. The rain is a welcome surprise and has given some respite from the smoke-filled air. That's it.
Yes. Okay. Well, in that case, we can go to WBRZ.
This is an interesting article.
It is indeed.
Innovative New Orleans school puts focus on environment and climate change.
A high school in New Orleans is preparing students for careers in coastal protection and restoration.
Boy, they need it.
They need it, but the idea that they would have a high school, we're talking about high school kids here.
Dedicated to this, yeah.
Yeah, anticipating a future with ongoing climate change and sea level rise. New Harmony High School opened in 2018 and has about 100 South Louisiana students. They're from all over southern Louisiana. Well, the one person in the article they talked about commutes 50 miles.
Yeah, they did mention that.
And, you know, but this is...
Well, from the article, besides their traditional classes in math, literature, and history, the New Harmony students take science classes that tackle environmental issues.
Yeah.
Like this is important, the levying of the Mississippi River and oil and gas development. So these kids are going to be prepared as they develop and go on to college and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to handle some of the problems that Louisiana is facing. And we've talked about
We've
that.
talked about this at length. One of the things that I find interesting, and it comes back to me every time we talk about Louisiana, is
Yeah.
we're talking about a state that is dominated by conservative Republican politics, but they accept the idea that they've got serious problems with a rising sea.
Oh, it's dissolving into the ocean.
Well, you know.
We talked about one guy who's moved like about 3 times.
We've talked many times about Cameron Parish,
Yeah,
which
that's
had
where it's
the
happening.
had the
That's the worst
largest
spot.
percentage of pro-Trump voters in that election.
And it's
And
the
they're-
part of Louisiana that's most at
Basically,
risk.
the people in town have all been told, and people in the county have all been, and it's a county that's about twice the size of Windham County, although it has a population of less than 7,000 people. But the people there have all been told, or almost all been told, that they are going to have to leave because the sea level is rising, and the land is subsiding as they pump the oil out from under it.
Well, let's move along.
Okay.
Tuesday, January 7th. And this is an interesting article.
With a picture, which I just put up.
That's the next one.
Oh, is it?
Las Vegas taxi company orders hundreds of
I
taxis.
put that in the wrong place, didn't
I think you did, yeah.
I did, yeah.
I think you did.
Okay.
Cap-
Go ahead.
I read it.
Oh,
Las
you
Vegas-
you read the title. This is from Clean Technica. Captain, which has 872 taxis among its total of 1,400 vehicles in Las Vegas, launched 30 Teslas in the taxi service in the city. However, that is just a soft launch in its Tesla fleet. The number of electric vehicles in the fleet will be in the hundreds by sometime in February.
The Tesla Model 3 is more than competitive in any high mileage market.
Right.
Okay? The more you drive a vehicle, the more money an electric vehicle is going to save you.
Yes.
And that's what's happening right here.
Yes. And you know, taxis, I don't know, but I would bet that they have the same problem police cars have, of a lot of idling.
A lot of idling and stuff like that. Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
not as intense as the police cars.
Not
but
as
it's the
intense.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, now we got that picture coming.
We
up,
have
so
that
let's
picture.
Take a look at that. That's not eggs.
That's not eggs.
That's a biogas plant. We saw one last week, but this is much bigger.
This is a big biogas plant.
EU plans a big increase in green gas to meet climate goals.
Production of biogas, biomethane, and green hydrogen will have to increase by at least 1,000%. That's a big increase by 2050.
I would say.
To reach the EU's climate neutrality objective for that year. An EU official said renewable gases today already represent around 7% of the gross inland energy consumption.
7% today. From
Now,
the article,
this is-
it says renewable gases need to reach 50 to 60%.
Yeah, and I was looking at this and I thought these figures don't add up. You increase 7% by 1,000%, you're up to 70%.
Yeah,
And they're saying 50% to 60%. But,
I wouldn't quibble.
well, the fact is, what they're saying is that the electricity consumption is going to go up.
Okay.
So an increase of 1,000% would not increase the percentage of electricity being consumed by 1,000%. So I think that's what it comes down to, is that these,
Well, the article is,
I think the people who wrote the article know, or the people who provided the figures knew what the figures meant. I
well,
think
the
they're correct
article's
figures.
encouraging. It does
is.
say getting there is not impossible.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you know, biomethane is getting more and more opposition, I should say. People are saying, wait a
Well,
minute,
it's still methane.
it's methane.
It's a little bit cleaner, but it's still methane.
Well, the methane in some cases is going to be produced whether you produce it intentionally or not.
like
and if
cows belching.
Yeah, and if you don't have some kind of way to burn it, which you would in a biomethane plant,
Okay.
it's going to go into the atmosphere. So this would make things better to use that biomethane. I think the people who say that we don't want that in our pipelines have got a point, because those pipelines all leak.
That's true.
So
Why they all leak, I don't know, but they do all leak.
We talked about that. We had an article years ago about some kids who did a study in Boston, and they drove through every street in Boston, and they located
that, yeah.
like 2,700 leaks.
Yeah.
And
All over the place.
a big organization. It might have been I don't know, it was the NRDC or, Rocky Mountain Institute or whatever it was. An organization went in, they wanted to replicate those figures and see if the kids had actually read it right. And they said, no, it's not 2,700, it's actually closer to 3,000.
Wow.
So,
well, I know in New York City, for example, it's not at all uncommon for a gas leak to destroy a house because it turns into a fire.
I remember years ago when a gas leak got into an elevator shaft in an apartment building in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it blew the face off the building.
Blew the whole building up, huh?
Well, not the whole building. No, it just blew.
Blew the face off.
It blew the face off. It blew the face of the elevator shaft off the building.
Okay.
Which is kind of scary,
I would think. I wouldn't want to be there when it happened.
Well, you're driving down the street and all of a sudden
an elevator door go by you. What was that?
That's right.
The sky is falling.
The sky is falling. I had a friend who was telling me about how he and his father were riding home from an outdoor movie in New Jersey. This is like 1955 probably. And all of a sudden cinder blocks started falling out of the sky.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. A factory had exploded because of a gas leak, and it was a weird thing. A factory exploded. The night watchman in the factory had been overcome by the fumes.
Ooh.
And had conked out. He'd collapsed unconscious. Yeah. The factory blew up, but it didn't kill him. In fact, apparently didn't.
Probably woke him up.
It might have. I would hate to wake up and discover the building that I'm in isn't the building that I'm in anymore because
It'd be kind of scary.
It would be. Okay.
Well, we got a picture coming up here of a mine.
Of a mine.
Yeah, let's get to the.
Yes, this is I couldn't resist this picture.
That's the Asturias mine in Spain.
El País in English. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that right either. But go ahead, Tom.
Greenhouse gas emissions drop in Spain as power plants ditch coal. And it's happening because of economics.
Yeah, it is. Spain has just taken 1 year to achieve a goal that was expected to require a decade. The government had predicted that by 2030, coal would no longer be used in power plants to generate electricity. I think we reported that.
Yeah.
This objective was all but achieved last year. They used a little bit of coal.
There's only a little bit of coal left in Spain.
And there is look at that picture, though. My conscience, that's Asturias. Asturias is in the northwest corner of Spain, and it's one of those areas of the world that is historically proven to be almost impossible to conquer.
Northwest, that's Basque Country, isn't it?
It is. Well, it's actually, I think it might be a little bit west of Basque Country, but it certainly includes Basque Country. It might be that it's all in Basque Country, but that's the area where, when the Moors and Arabs invaded Spain during the 6th century,
that's as far as they got, isn't it?
They got to Asturias. They claimed to own it, but there were a bunch of Visigoths who had gone up into that area, and
they had other ideas.
And they had other ideas, and they came out and started what was called the Kingdom of Asturias, and that kingdom was the ancestor kingdom to Spain and Portugal both.
Oh, okay.
And that was the start of the Reconquista. That started in that kind of territory. And you think about Arabs and Moors moving into that territory to try to conquer it from people who wanted to resist. You can imagine why it was hard to get them out of there.
I would think.
It's hard to attack uphill when you can't see the people that are up there, and all they have to do is roll rocks down.
I was just going to say, throw rocks at you.
Yeah. Okay. I think we are up to Wednesday, January 8th.
I'm just trying to see if there's anything worth reading in this.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, please.
Well, we've pretty much covered it, so let's move on. We got another picture coming up.
We have an item from BBC, and that is a picture of gas flares. I think those gas flares are in Iran or Iraq.
They're in a place with palm trees, that's for sure.
They're in a place with palm trees. That is true. We can either that or somebody did some good artwork. Okay, what do you have?
Interesting flaring gas in that picture, though.
Those
Wow.
are huge gas flares.
Yeah, they certainly are.
Really big, and you'd think that they'd be able to trap that stuff and make something out of it.
Well, I don't know how they're doing it, but when I first flew over Saudi Arabia when I was moving there to live,
Yeah,
I could look down and see flaring gas all over the place.
everywhere. Yeah,
And when I left, that was gone.
really.
They had managed to capture virtually all of the flared gas.
Well,
Hey, it's money.
yes,
They
it
can
is,
sell it.
and not only that, but it's worse than using the gas. If you look at that picture, you can see smoke coming up, and that smoke is particulates, and it indicates that the gas, they may be flaring it, but things are getting into the atmosphere, and they're not good. And you know, I had a thought about this, Tom. There's a kind of a hackneyed story that scientists tell. You know, people hit this in high school and college.
Yeah.
And the story is that if you do the calculations and you can figure out how many molecules were in the breath that Julius Caesar exhaled, as he said, et tu, Brute, and you can figure out how many breath-sized units there are in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And if you figure that out and you just do all the math, you come to a really kind of amazing conclusion, which is that if you could track where your molecules in your body came from, chances are you'd have at least one that was in that breath of Julius Caesar's. When things
I'll have to
get
check on that.
well, you know, I've talked to people. Steve Rucroft, who is a physicist who was on this show.
He was on the show, yeah.
He and I talked about that, and he said, "Yeah, you do the math. There it
Yeah.
is. If you consider that smoke coming up out of that thing,
You can pull it up
if
again.
that smoke went up more than a week ago, we probably have a
probably
little bit of
breathing
that
some
in
of
us.
it right now, yeah.
And we've got probably everybody in America has got some molecule or atom that was discharged from Chernobyl when it blew up. You know, this stuff gets all over the place. It is, as they say, ubiquitous. Anyway,
This is a good article. Iran attack. Crude oil prices rise after Iraq missile attacks.
Yep.
This is very current.
yes, it is.
This is happening as we speak.
Absolutely. Oil prices have risen further after two bases hosting U.S. troops in Iraq were hit by ballistic missiles. Brent crude was up 1.4% at $69.21 per barrel in the middle of Asian trade, easing back from earlier gains. Global stock market prices were sent lower on concerns over the conflict. And
So
Donald
gas
Trump,
is going to be going up.
well, Donald Trump had a press conference yesterday, or did something yesterday, in which he talked about this. And he said, well, he thinks that things are easing back. And in fact, there were a bunch of reports that appeared in the news yesterday that I could have put up at my blog today. I didn't, because they're not really directly related to, maybe they are, to use of fossil fuels. But the damage that was done on those two military bases indicated, in the views of some people, that the Iranians really didn't want to kill anybody. They just wanted to let Americans know
They were
that
sending
could.
a message.
That's right. And so
If they wanted to kill somebody, they could have.
well, I'm afraid that this is not over, and it isn't over until it's over. And Donald Trump is kind of taking credit for it. And
Well, I look at this whole thing as an attempt to divert attention from his impeachment.
I think it's very useful for him from that point
Yeah.
of view. And I think, you know, maybe the Iranians would like to have indecision and differences continue in the United States government, and secretly back Donald Trump because he's divisive. That, I think, is an altogether.
certainly
I
happen.
think that's what Putin does.
Yeah?
But you know, there we have it. Okay, we should continue on with our next
Let's
thing.
see. Well, we've got a little bit of article here. Did I read it? Crude oil prices
yes,
rise? Yes, I
and
did.
I read the synopsis.
Well, here's a takeaway here.
Okay.
The attack obviously was in retaliation for the killing of this guy, Qasem Soleimani.
yes.
Okay. His death had raised concerns that the conflict between the U.S. and Iran could disrupt shipping.
Oh,
the
yeah,
world's
absolutely.
busiest route for oil.
Yeah.
This is right there, the Straits of
Yes,
Hormuz.
Straits of
okay?
Hormuz.
Around a fifth of the global oil supply passes through that strait.
Yeah.
So this this could have some very large
It
consequences.
could have big consequences.
There's an interesting map in this article. It's a good article.
The one thing, though, is Saudi Arabia can export oil elsewhere and otherwise besides the Strait of Hormuz.
They can do it overland.
They
got
can
a
do it
pipeline.
overland to the Red Sea.
Yeah, they got a pipeline.
And so if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, the biggest victims of that will be Iraq and Iran.
That's correct.
So,
it's not going to bother the Saudis much at all.
No, it'll bother them, but not much. Okay, our next item is from CNN.
Yeah, we're running toward the end here.
Yeah, we are indeed.
U.S. greenhouse gas emissions fell in 2019 due to less coal consumption.
After rising sharply in 2018, U.S. greenhouse gas emissions fell an estimated 2.1% in 2019. Analysis of preliminary figures published by Rhodium Group shows the fall was almost solely due to a reduced use of coal for generating electricity, which has come about because of Donald Trump's war on coal.
This, again, is a good article. We've got a lot of good articles
I'm
this
being
time.
facetious about Donald Trump's war on coal. But,
Yeah, right. That went over my head.
More coal plants closed in his first 2 years than in Obama's first 4.
His inadvertent war on coal.
He's been trying very hard to stop coal mines from closing, and he just hasn't been succeeding.
Economics aren't on his side.
No, they aren't. Although he has a point. You don't have to worry about default. You print your own money.
Yeah. Well, there's a 7-minute video here that's worth looking at. How climate change impacted the world in 2019.
Yes.
It's worth looking at. It's a very informative video.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, coal power generation fell 18% in 2019.
Yeah.
Okay, worldwide. A small bit of good news concerning the state of the planet.
Yeah.
Emissions from nearly every other sector, which includes transportation, buildings, industry, and agriculture, went up.
Right. Okay, our last
Another
item
picture
is
here.
from Power Engineering Magazine.
Nice picture.
Nice picture.
Nice picture.
That is a Siemens Gamesa offshore wind turbine.
Dominion's planned U.S. offshore wind project could be the world's largest at 2.64 gigawatts.
This is
Remember, we said giga.
Yeah, we're talking
This is
about
gonna be big.
the United States here.
Yeah.
Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy said that Dominion Energy named it the preferred supplier for what could be the largest offshore wind farm in the world at 2.64 gigawatts. Siemens said the model and number of turbines remain to be determined. There's a lot about this.
That's what we're looking at right there.
Yeah, there's a lot about this particular item. They don't know what specific turbines. They don't know how many of them. They don't even know for 100% sure that they are going to get the job, but they are the preferred vendor, and so it's a pretty good shot that they've got at getting this. This is a huge
Well, it's interesting.
order.
We've talked about the Coastal Virginia offshore wind project.
Yes.
Which is very small. It's only 2 turbines.
2 turbines.
Okay. And that's under construction as we
Yes,
speak.
and this is going to be the next step.
This is phase, well, the first one's a pilot project.
Yes, I know.
And this is going to be huge.
Yeah.
This is going to be huge. The commercial project that they're talking about here will be installed in 3 phases of approximately 880 megawatts each.
Yes.
So they're big. 3 phases.
Each of the phases is
Each
big.
phase will consist of more than 70 turbines. Well, it's going to be twice as big. It's going to have to be.
Yeah.
If this is the turbine that they use.
Yeah.
All of which will be located more than 27 miles off Virginia Beach. So
Which
it's
means
way out of
you will not be
people's
able
view.
to see these.
Not at all.
But they're going to be supplying a lot of power. I mean, this is a lot of electricity.
Well, they're talking about the first phase expected to begin delivery of renewable energy by 2024. And the 2 additional phases are going to come right after them year after year.
Yeah.
2025, 2020. This is big.
This is very big. Okay, we are out of
This
time.
is the end of our show.
It's the end of our show. Why don't you put the 2 of us up? You know, every day at the blog, I put a thing up that says something like "Have an unimaginably superb day," something like that.
Yeah, something like
I put that out in my, and I
There you go.
decided I'd cycle through these things and pick the best of the week for the show. So have an unimaginably superb week. See you later.
Alligator.